for the podcast episode, we have a special guest from abroad, and we are having like a very nice afternoon on the balcony in Tallinn, Estonia, during a very, very special event, and we will also talk about this. And so with me is Hari from Gym. So
Pleasure to be here with you. So I'm from London, and I'm here in what is seemingly a sunny Tallinn today.
Yeah, it is finally proper summer. It's not like the Estonian summer, it's summer.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here, enjoying Mindvalley University, enjoying meeting lots of people, connecting, and it's my second time here in Tallinn.
Okay. So we are here for Mindvalley University, which is basically like a self-development conference, and it's full of connections, community workshops. It's going on for 3 weeks. So for me, it's easy, kind of, because I'm at home. I can go to home every day. I can be a little bit misaligned, but not really. I can sleep in my bed. I can go to my own gym. I can do my meal prep. But for you, how has it been? Like sticking to your routines or not?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It is more challenging, and one of the things I've been doing a lot for the last 10-12 years is implementing different routines. I remember when I started looking at high-performing people, one of the common things was like morning routines, evening routines, and I started implementing different things over the course of several years. Eventually they got to be quite big, and it got to the point where at one point that if I wanted to do everything in my morning routine, for example, it would take me like 3 hours. And if I had to leave the house at 7 in the morning, that meant like getting up at 4, which I was never going to do. So one of my founding tenets is have a framework, but have flexibility within the framework. And so what that means is that although in an ideal world I'll do A, B, C, D, or whatever, in reality I have actually a really simple framework that I use for morning routines, which now we're talking about athletes and high performance and everything else. So one of the things I think when I speak to my audiences, because I do a lot of workshops and talks with companies, organisations about mindset, resilience, high performance, and so on. But so my basic morning routine, we think about high performance vehicles, we think about a BMW car, BMW, 3 things that go into that high performance morning routine, which can be done in as little as like a few minutes, like 5 minutes. B stands for breathing, that could be breath work, it could be meditation. The M stands for movement, so it doesn't necessarily mean exercise or your HIIT training or your main exercise of the day, just movement, body. And then W for water, which I have down here, which I always like to have. And so even if you're like super busy, like the breathing, sometimes I remember when I did my first Mindvalley University, I was staying in an apartment smaller than this one, and it was 4 of us in that apartment. And so there wasn't really a super opportunity, so I would do my breathing in the shower. So I do like a kind of a special exhale breath when I'm drying myself. Before I put my towel on, for example, I'm drying myself with my hands, and I'm doing breathing like that. Then I may do some, and I remember I was doing like some push-ups against the wall in the bathroom and things like that, just to get me moving. And then I will always drink a large amount of water. So that could take like no extra time, because you're probably going to shower anyway, you're probably going to do that. So for me, that's the basic routine. Here, I try to bring a few things that work for me. So one of the things I brought with me, which is a bit unusual when people say, is a blender, but not just any blender. I bought like a Vitamix blender.
Yeah, when I went to Dubai for Mindvalley event, I actually bought for this especially like small stove, so I cook my scrambled eggs in the hotel. So I don't think it's weird. I think it's completely normal to go with a blender.
Well, this is it. This is what I was saying to a friend this morning, because he was going, all these things are a bit weird, because I bring that. I brought my own ice cube tray. So I bring my own, because I've been to lots of Airbnbs before where they don't have ice cube trays, or the ones that they do have, it's hard to take the ice out on. So I brought my own ice cube tray, I brought my own bottle brush for my smoothie bottle, and also I bought a special blend of powders so my smoothie is quite complicated these days, and people can find it on my YouTube channel, but it has like 30 different ingredients in it. And for me, it's the foundational nutrient that I have that day, and so that I know that if I don't eat well the rest of the day, at least I've had that. And actually probably about half a dozen people at Mindvalley this year at least have tried it, because they've either come from my morning swim. So my morning routine is very basic at the moment. It's like I wake up, I may do some breath work or meditation, then often a friend comes around and we do about 5 minutes of this mobilization of the body routine that I've got, mainly just hips and a bit of stretching and a bit of resistance and strength training. Then we wander down here on the way to the beach, we do some pull-ups at the bike thing, and then we go for a swim for 10 minutes, come back, shower, make a smoothie, good to go. The important thing for anyone listening is to put things in place, but also not to be so tied to them. Maybe at the beginning you have to be for the first 30 days or 6 months or whatever, so you can get into that routine and that habit. But then be conscious enough to know what is the best approach in any given moment in time. And so even today, for example, I full confession here, had a really late night, had about 3 hours sleep. I couldn't sleep in because of all the light, and I wanted to do like my swim, and I suggested to people. So I missed out some of the mobilization stuff. I just went straight into the water, and it's about having flexibility.
Yeah, I think in the fitness world you wouldn't be like considered weird, because in fitness world and bodybuilding, which is where I come from right now, it's so normal to bring our own food, I know people like traveling with their own stoves, their own pots, their own oatmeal, because they just want to have their own food and they don't want to leave anything to chance. And I think if they're like, doing high level bodybuilding or like, not even high level, but just competing on national or zonal level, you have to like pay attention to this. So in this world you wouldn't stick out as weird, it's super normal. But considering this, do you have like any athletic background, or what have you been doing?
Yeah, so my whole life, it's interesting. I've been always quite fit and active, right? So from a young age 8 years old, I was doing judo, then I was doing karate, football all the time, basketball, athletics at school, and then probably during my 20s, it was more just gym work, I guess. And then I've also started I did a few triathlons in my late 20s and got into cycling a little bit. And a few friends and I, we go on these cycle trips each summer. We started off by cycling from London to Paris one year, over 4 days, and then the next year was Nice to Pisa, the following was Venice to Zagreb, or Split to Tirana. And there's a mixture of us, I mean, like anywhere from 10 to 20 people that do that. So I've been quite active, and then mainly my main thing now for the last 10 years, or my foundational practice, is yoga. So I practice yoga regularly. I teach it as a hobby, if you like, just once or twice a week. But my main thing is always around health and vitality, because although I was fit generally, I probably only about 12 years ago realised the difference between health and fitness, because sometimes we use these terms interchangeably, or we see someone who is physically quite fit but we actually don't know what's going on internally in the body, and also when you train a lot, actually, interestingly enough, because training is a massive stressor on the body, so actually it can deplete you quite a lot, and you can still be very susceptible to colds, illnesses and so on. So really what I started to shift my focus to was health as a foundation and longevity, so aging well, because for me it's less important now performance, in terms of I'm not trying to do triathlons, I'm not trying to climb any mountains anymore or anything like that. But what I am trying to do is, when I'm getting into my 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and beyond, that I'm able to live, unassisted. I can travel on planes and pick up my luggage and walk up and down stairs and pick up grandkids or whatever. For me, that's more important than maybe getting a sub 4-hour marathon or whatever the thing might be.
Yeah, I think it's very true that the health and fitness are not the same. Especially, I have been, in the bodybuilding world, where you may look like super lean, but inside it's like, oh, you might be hurting, or like maybe as a woman you don't have your period. That has happened to me like twice. And also when athletes are like at a peak performance, like for instance like runners or even like bodybuilders, they are also very susceptible to any diseases. If you're like in your best shape, like ready to run the marathon of your life, you can also like fall ill very easily, because the immune system is not so strong anymore.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've got friends who do bodybuilding as well, in competitions, and for me it's not something I would necessarily go for, at least I don't think that would be, just because, again, my focus is more health than performance based at the moment. That may change as the decades go, and you want to show that you're fit in your 50s compared to like someone in their 30s, but generally for me it's not about that. And I think there is this misconception. Also, there's this big misconception as well, that when you're in health and wellness like I am, maybe you never get ill. And this was the irony is a few days ago, and I'm feeling alright now actually, but I was coming down with a cold, and I don't ever get colds. I used to get colds all the time, up until about 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I used to get 4, 5, 6, 7 colds a year, and then I didn't get any for like 5 or 6 years, and then now maybe once a year or once every 2 years. But the only reason I do get the cold is because I'm doing something that isn't in alignment with what I actually teach. Because if I do follow exactly, and now we can't be perfect, that's reality, and so I never teach perfection, but I just try and teach balance and awareness. But if I don't follow my own models, I'm going to get ill. And that's what's happening here, because for one reason or another, which we can go into, I'm not following everything in my philosophy.
Yeah, I think it's we are in kind of intense weeks right now. There's like so much going on, so many people to meet and connect and talk, and like you said, don't get like much sleep.
No,
yeah,
that's it. I mean, I try and prioritise where possible. So actually, that's why I took my own Airbnb. It's way more expensive to do that than to share. But for me, the benefit is that I can sleep and properly sleep, and I don't have to talk to people if I don't want to. And so at the moment, it's the best of both worlds, because I've got my good mate in this apartment, me in the other apartment, and so we have our own space, but we can be together when we want to be together. So it's costing us twice as much, but it makes it easier to kind of have like 3 weeks away. If I was here for just a week, then maybe I wouldn't bring my blender, or I'll bring a NutriBullet instead of Vitamix, and I wouldn't be bothered if I was in a hotel. But so it depends how long I'm away for as to what I want to do to my routines.
Yeah, it's like you're packing your routines with all the rest of the luggage. It's like I'm the person who is always telling people the first thing that I pack when I go traveling is like my gym stuff. And when I used to run long distances, I was also first packing my running shoes. And for some people, it's like, oh, I would never think about this, but for me, it's like I don't stop training when I go abroad. It's like because it's so big part of me, and it's like part of identity as well. And I don't want to like miss out, and I feel better if I do it, and if I just find a way in a new situation. And yeah, when I used to run, it was also like very interesting to explore new areas while running. It's like it's like a new place to run. It's not like it's not an obstacle. Yeah, I think it's also about the mindset, how do you approach it. It's like you can say, oh, I'm abroad, I don't have any time for training or running, or you could be like, oh, I have 1 hour run planned. Okay, let's see what I can explore now, and what kind of new trails and what kind of new places. And also like with the gym right now, it's also like, oh, I'm in another country. Let's see what the gym culture is here. It's like, for me, it's like super exciting actually to train in new places. Maybe it's not the perfect training, and the machine is a little bit different. It's hard to like compare to my own workout routine at home, but still, I'm still like showing up for myself. And I'm also like exploring new areas. It's like,
exactly.
Why not?
And, as you said before the call, like done is better than perfect. So you're not going to have a perfect routine. My friend's just gone to the gym now here because he's training for something. For me, I can use the environment around me a little bit more to train. So, and it also depends how much you're away. Because if you're away only like 1 or 2 weeks in the year, maybe it's a good actually opportunity for your body to get some rest and maybe just do some walking and exploring. But if you're away consistently, then you have to get into that habit. And the thing I sometimes say to clients that I coach, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the world and a lot of uncertainty in situations, and I say, well, and we like certainty. So if you're familiar with Tony Robbins' human needs concept, where he says that every human's got 6 human needs. One is a need for certainty or consistency, but then one is a need for uncertainty and unpredictability. So we have these conflicting needs, and I say to people, you can't be certain of the circumstance of the situation, but what you can then create certainty in is that you will find a way to adapt in that situation. So if you have certainty in that as a thought, and it kind of goes back to what you said a little while ago about mindset. It's all about mindset. So as we said, my brand is called the Thought Gym, as in thinking with the brain, the Thought Gym. And the reason I called it that now 13, 14 years ago, I came up with that name, is because I realised when it came to, because I came to this from an exercise health perspective, coaching perspective, that people start a new diet in January, they give up by February, they start a new sport, they give up 6 weeks later, because what they're fundamentally doing is they're trying to change a behaviour without changing the mindset behind the behaviour in the first place. So what I realised, and my tagline to my first book was, train the mind and the rest will follow, because if you train your mind, then things become easier. So we were talking a little bit with a friend about discipline before, and he was saying, one of the things I think about you, Harry, is you're really disciplined, right? You bring your blender with you on holiday, you go in the sea every day, and you inspire people to come with you, and you're really disciplined. And I'm like, I don't know if I like that as a term in terms of to reflect what I'm doing, because although it seems quite disciplined, discipline and willpower take effort. Now I'm not saying what I'm doing is not taking effort to some degree, but what it is more is that it's that it becomes a habitual part of your identity or your nature, so that you don't actively think about it. It's like, so the example I gave him was, imagine there was a chocolate or a sweet that you used to love when you were 10 years old, but now you've stopped eating it, you've outgrown it and stuff, but they still sell it. And so when you go into the supermarket and shop, it's not like when you're going shopping for your groceries, you're having to use discipline to stop you from buying that thing. It doesn't even enter into your mind, because your identity has changed from a 10-year-old person addicted to that particular chocolate to maybe, someone in their 30s or 40s who is, looking for peppers and cucumbers or whatever it might be. Not to say that you wouldn't buy other chocolate, you might do, but you're not buying that one that you loved and it's not willpower that's stopping you from getting that. It's just that it's not part of your mindset.
I think right now I have this thing with alcohol. I was never like a big drinker, but now I have been like completely sober like for 2.5 years. Before this I was maybe drinking once a year, 1 glass of champagne. Now like I don't drink alcohol and I don't even feel any temptation. I don't go into the alcohol aisle in the supermarket. I just don't care. Or like smoking. I have never smoked even 1 cigarette in my life. I just don't care. I don't need to restrict myself. I don't have to use any willpower.
Exactly.
It's not part of me. It's not part of my identity.
Exactly. It's not part of your consciousness. It's not part of your identity. And I think that's the biggest change. It's also the hardest change, changing your identity or your values and beliefs. There's a framework called the Robert Dilts epistemology of change. And to put it briefly, there's a triangle that has different levels to it, and the base level for change is your environment. So for example, let's say you were a smoker, but you always smoked in the pub, right? If you change that environment, and you go to the beach, maybe you're less likely to smoke because you're always associated with being in the pub with smoking. That's fine to a certain degree. But will that stop that person smoking? Maybe not, right? Then the next level up is skills and capabilities. So if you smoke because you're stressed, if you taught that person a different way to de-stress, like to breathe in or whatever, then maybe they stop. However, the next level above that is values and beliefs. So if that person, even though you've taught them all these techniques or whatever, still believes that smoking is cool, right? Because they see that picture of James Dean, the movie star, with a cigarette or whatever, or when they're at school, all the cool kids used to smoke, or at work everyone smokes, and then whoever smokes with the manager gets the best projects or whatever. So if you believe that, it's going to be really hard for you to change, even if you change your environment and everything else, because you believe that in order to fit in, you have to smoke. And then the next level above that would be your identity. So like, if you see yourself as a smoker, so there are people that have quit smoking, but they still see themselves as ex-smokers, which means that there can still be that temptation to return to it. My dad, he smoked for 40 years, and he quit one day, just like that. Now, that's the reason he quit was because he had a heart bypass, triple heart bypass, but he never had a temptation to smoke a cigarette after that, because something in his identity went from smoker, skipped ex-smoker to non-smoker. And so there was no temptation. And then the level above identity is your purpose, or your mission statement for your company. So if my mission, for example, on this earth is to be a beacon of hope and inspiration for people's health and well-being, it's really hard for me to then smoke, because it's not fitting in with my purpose.
Yeah, it's not aligned with like your own personality actually.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
for me, it's like, I have never had that kind of temptation, because it's just so misaligned. And then I have this thought coming into my head that, oh yeah, I want to go there and smoke. And also I identify a lot as an athlete, so this also makes many choices easier. Like, okay, it's late, I'm going to bed. It's like everybody else is partying, but I'm like, I don't care, I'm an athlete. I care about my health, I want to maybe go to the gym next day, I want to feel good. So I'm choosing myself, because this is just my mindset of being an athlete.
Exactly. So this is something I work with clients about. It's like understanding your values. So a value is effectively what's important to you in life. That's how you can find them out. And my top 2 values usually are health and security. Now I do have a value of connection, but it's probably about number 6 on my list. So what might happen, a bit like the example you've just given, where everyone's going out and they're partying and stuff, and they invite you out. Now if your value is health at the top and training, you're probably more likely to say no to going out, so you can go to bed, sleep, go training the next day. My sister, one of my sisters, I know she's into health and all that, but I think her value of social connection is high, so she'll be the one going, yeah, let's go out and let's just skip the gym the next day. So when you understand your values, it can be interesting, because sometimes you might say to yourself, hang on a second, are other values that are lower down on my list being pushed out because I'm always following the top ones. So for example, I have a value of social connection, but I also have a value of security and health as number two. So security could be feeling safe, but it could also be financial security or something like that. So if you go out, you're going to spend lots of money, you know, taxis, drinks, whatever. So that's taking away financial security. And it's also taking away health because you're going to do the bad habits when you're out, you're going to not go to the gym and so on. However, if I only live by those two values, I will miss out social connection. So for example here, I'm focusing on social connection in my model for well-being. There's lots of elements to it, but one is connection, and that's the bit I miss the most when I'm in London. So to some degree I'm going to sacrifice my sleep, I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of food. Now again, I try and do the best. I have the smoothies, I make food here in the apartment, which is why I don't want a hotel. I don't go out every night, I'm going to like stagger it. I'm monitoring my levels, both subjectively with how I feel, but also objectively with my aura ring, which I'm sure lots of listeners have had or experienced, and it basically tells you how ready you are. My scores are telling me, are you sure you don't want to turn on rest mode? Because like I normally have my readiness in the high 80s and 90s. Last couple of days, I'm not lying, it's in the 40s.
And the maximum is 100.
Yeah, so think of it like a score out of 100, like a test. Yeah, anything over 85, I feel like Superman. 90, I feel like 10 Superman. I don't know that I ever get 95 or anything close to that, but when I'm at this level 40, it's not a great thing.
But this is also like for a limited time. It's because the event will be over in 1 week, and it's just then you're going back to your routine.
Yeah.
So do you already like know how the transition is going to be, or just switching immediately back into your?
It's always a bit tricky. Last year, what I did actually is I went away for a month after this, and I went to Cyprus and stayed on the beach and swam and then my scores went up and it was great. But again, it was a different routine. Again, I was doing the BMW, so I was getting up, I was breathing, I was moving, I was doing all that. It is tricky to get back into a routine sometimes, which is why I always talk about having flexibility and not being so rigid with routines. But yeah, my routines at home, I do like, I do my meditation in the morning, I do 25 minutes of rebounding on a little trampoline. Maybe I might do my main exercise at that point in the day as well after that. I make my juices, my smoothies. And yeah, I feel great for that. But it's not always going to happen when you're away. It's not always going to happen immediately when you come back either.
So it's more like gradually switching back to the routine.
Yeah,
like, okay, I'm home, let's do the smoothie, let's do everything.
I think it's a lot about forgiveness as well, because I think I can be hard on myself, people can be hard on themselves for being less than perfect, or looking at Instagram and seeing these people crush it here. And I think the question you have to ask yourself is if it, like, so for example, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I think, you know what, the best thing I can do now is have an extra hour sleep as opposed to go to the gym. Then you just have to be aware enough to recognise that, am I having that lie-in too many times in a row? And then I'm 6 months later and I've not got up and gone to the gym at all. Or am I doing it because actually, you know what, my aura ring is saying I'm at 40, this extra hour and a half is going to be way better than going to the gym. I'll go for a walk at lunchtime, maybe that's better use of my time. And the main thing I teach, if I'm honest, is awareness. So people think that I'm some pure health guy because they see me with green smoothies and exercising. And I say, look, you are going to see me walking down the street one day with a bag of crisps and chips and something. Please do not get shocked, right? That is going to happen, okay? And I don't want to feel guilty for doing that because I'm saying, in fact, actually on Instagram the other day, I posted me just eating crisps for dinner because I was, had a couple of drinks. Now, what I'm trying to tell people is do things with awareness. So back years ago, I was doing things and I wasn't aware like what a certain food type might do to me. So for example, I typically don't eat gluten and a few other things I don't eat. I know that if I do, one of several things will happen. Either my sinuses will get blocked up again, I may get bloated depending on the kind of thing. My old injuries are more likely to hurt me. Now, I might not think that that's a big deal if I know the next day all I'm going to be doing is sitting at home doing nothing. However, if the next day I'm going to be performing, like I'm going on a cycle trip or I'm presenting in front of lots of people at work, I don't want to feel like that. And therefore I will make the decision with awareness that I'm not going to do that thing. If I find that, by drinking, I'm likely to be a bit maybe groggy the next day, not performing, that might be okay if I don't have to perform. I'm not going to go and drink when I have to get up at 6 and spend 8 hours on my feet teaching 30, 15-year-olds how to speak, which I sometimes do.
Yeah. even if you're not like into a competitive sport and you're not competing, it sounds like you are thinking like an athlete. It's like, okay, I have something important coming up next day. It's not like a race or competition, but maybe it's like an important talk or like a cycling trip, and you're already like planning ahead. And I think this is also like a big part of the like athlete's mindset actually.
Yeah, I mean it definitely is, because I mean I do a lot of public speaking, so I do various things. I speak on my topic, which is health, well-being, mindset, resilience, whether that's the companies, organisations. But I also go into schools, and I might do an 8-hour day teaching 30, 15-year-olds how to present in public. And you cannot have a bad day in front of those people. If you work, like we both actually found out we worked in IT, right? So, you know, different bits probably, but you can be a little bit off your game behind the computer and just get away with it. You cannot do that in front of people, especially children. You cannot do that, and so you have to perform. And you know, there have been times I've had to go in and I've not been at my best, but you have to turn it on. But it does take a lot of energy, so that when you come home, you are pretty spent. And I might go home and I've got lots of recovery devices, so I'll go home, I'll lie on my couch, I've got this infrared light thing that I'll put on my face, another one I'll put on my body, I might have an acupressure mat that I sit on, or a neck massage, and neck hammock, sorry. So I use all these little devices, or a Theragun, and I'll try and recover, and I just won't go out, so I might be in bed by like 9 o'clock that night, and just to recover. Because I actually do, I remember listening to Tony Robbins once, and as part of his UPW and event he goes, he runs like 3 marathons or something like that in that time. And I believe that, because I can be in front of a classroom full of people and not have left the classroom, and I will leave the day with 15,000 steps just in the classroom.
Just walking back and forth.
Yeah, and going to the, and so it is like being an athlete, and this is actually why I try and teach coaches and speakers and entrepreneurs about health, because you are your business, and if you're not performing, you're not going to earn the money, and you've got to see your job as an athletic endeavour.
Yeah, it's like if you're like high performer, like in business, you also have to think a little bit like an athlete.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're going to important business meetings, it's like going to a race, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And also you have to, coming back to what you can control, because I like the Stoic philosophy, right? It's the ancient Stoic wisdom. But one of the things that they say in Stoic philosophy is about control what you can control. And so you cannot control the performance of other people. You can only control what you bring to that performance. And so there's no point worrying about what other people are doing in a business meeting or in a bodybuilding competition or whatever, as you focus on what you've got control over. And I say to my students all the time, there's only 2 things you can control in life. The 2 things you can control are 1, your attitude, and 2, your actions. That's it. So there's no point, and actually I forget this as well, because there's no point thinking, does this person like me or not? Because you can't control the way they like you. You can't control the economy or the weather or any of that. We still forget it. I've forgotten that this week. I've gone, I wonder if this person likes me. And then I get caught up. And I'm like, actually, you know what? The only thing I can control is, am I nice to them? Do I smile? Do I have engaging conversation with them? If they like me, great. If they don't, great. Like, but I can't get caught up on making the other person change something.
You can't force people to like you, or like you can't force people to transform either.
Yeah.
In the healthy bodies or whatever.
No, that's the thing. Like my mum always says, oh, you're preaching to the converted. I'm like, well, yeah, because at the end of the day, I can't change people. You can only change yourself. I can share ideas, concepts, stories, whatever, be supportive, but ultimately change comes from within the person themselves. And so it does frustrate me. Even though I know this, I still ignore it, because I'm always trying to change my parents and my family and say, yeah, you should really do this, or you could really try doing this. And it's challenging, because you see people you love who you know that you can help, but really you can't, because they can only help themselves.
Yeah. So I also have like a nutritionist background, and I used to work as a massage therapist and a nutritionist as well. And when I was like counseling people, I got kind of frustrated when I was actually giving advice to my family members. For example, if my sister asked for advice or somebody else, it's like I realized that you can't actually help your family, because they are like, and they might go to a specialist who is maybe as good as you, or like maybe you are even got better. And then they go to a personal trainer or something, they're like, oh yeah, she was saying exactly the same things as you did, but yeah, they will start acting like according to their words, but not your.
Exactly.
Because they kind of trust the external expert more than their own family member who's
Absolutely.
also smart.
This happened to me. No, there's two phrases that come to mind, and one is you cannot be a prophet in your own land. Right? So you cannot be a prophet in your own land, which means you have to go somewhere else to kind of then teach your world. And that's what I do, is that I hope by enough other people paying attention to me, my parents or whoever close to me might finally pay attention. And I did the same thing. I went to a specialist who basically told my dad exactly the same stuff I've been saying for years. And it kind of landed a little bit with him, but my mum was like, why are we paying this guy like £300, right? We should just pay you £300 to do this. I'm like, and the other phrase that comes to mind is people that pay attention. People that don't. And that's the thing. And so I'm kind of sometimes a bit reticent to giving advice away for free or anything like that. Even though you want to help, you want to do things, I think to myself, like, people don't pay attention. It's like, whenever I've given a book away, I've written now 4 books, I sometimes give them away for certain reasons, but I don't like doing that because there's no value in that for that person. They're unlikely to read it. If I charge that person £1,000 for that book, they'll probably read it, you know. Yeah. So people that pay attention. That's the reality of it.
Could you maybe tell a little bit more about these books? So what are they all about?
So the first one actually is the same as a brand name called The Thought Gym, and really the reason I wrote that is because I started learning all these amazing concepts of how to change things like your identity and beliefs and values that we were talking about earlier in a fraction of the time using I guess a communication tool called Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP. So I got quite excited by that, and I wrote this book because I wanted people to understand that before you make a change, maybe in terms of your diet or your exercise, you have to change the mindset that drives the behaviour. So each chapter went through, maybe why diets don't work, then what beliefs and values, your language. Because sometimes if you say to yourself, I have to go swimming today, when you feel like you have to do something, it's like there's no desire there and some resistance. If you say, I get to go swimming in the sea today, I'm not going to be thinking about the fact it's maybe a bit colder than I'd like it to be. I go, I'm right by the beach here, I get to go swimming every day, rather than I have to go for a swim. So we talked about language, we talked about beliefs, we talked about values, we talked about things like water. So it was a general book, and then the second book was a book I wrote with a co-author, and we came up with five key elements of health and well-being taken from my larger model, which maybe we'll get to, maybe we won't, but the model that we created with the other one was just 5 components. So we looked at things like sleep and breathing, nutrition, activity, habits and routines, and that was a short book. And now I've written 2 other books, but the 2 books that I've written, not yet released, will be soon. They're both the same book, but different versions. So one's around 120,000 words, about 450 pages, so it's big. The other one is only about 100 pages. They're both talking about my philosophy called the Leadership Beat Model, which is my overarching philosophy for health and well-being, which is what I teach to people all over the place. And I think it's my purpose in life, has been for the last 12 years. I discovered the philosophy 10 years ago, and so ever since I discovered it, my purpose has been to share this idea with the world, because ultimately it makes things really easy and simple to understand. What does it take to live a healthy, long, vitalised life with good resilience and less susceptibility to illness and burnout? So the 2 books are going to be based on that.
Yeah, going back to this, I have to and I need to, and I get to it. So, I have something similar on my mind. It's like whenever I feel like I'm saying things like, oh, I need to go or I have to go, I try to change this, like either also verbally thank people I want to go. I don't want to make excuses. If I really feel like, okay, now it's time for me to go because I want to go to sleep, or I want to be home, or I want to recharge and recover and be in the gym next morning. So I'm training my mind also to say I want to go, or I want to do something. Because I think whenever I say I have to, I need to, it's like it has some kind of pressure and force in it. But if you replace all these I have to and I need to with I want, and it doesn't sound 100% yes, it's maybe there's something you need to change. It's like either change the attitude or change the situation. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the thing is, people might listen to this and say, well, isn't that just playing a little bit of linguistic judo where you're just changing things? I'm like, one thing I teach people, I've got a few things that I teach people which are what I would call fundamental truths of life. One of them we shared, which is you can only control 2 things, your attitude and your actions. The other fundamental was focus on what you've got control over, because you can't control anything else anyway. But the other one is that nothing has any meaning except for the meaning that you choose to give it. And so we have chosen that language of I have to, and we've also chosen that language of I want to, or I get to. Which one is right or wrong, better or worse? You decide, right? And the reality is that nothing means anything. So, for example, classic example on the way here. So there's someone that I know, not that well, at Mindvalley. I've met them probably a couple of times last year and this year, and I always feel that they're a little bit cold with me. They don't really want to engage. And I saw them here and they were rushing away, and I recognised them from behind. I said, "Hey, so and so," and they kind of said, "Oh, well done," but they didn't even stop. Like I was only about 3 feet behind them, so they didn't stop for me to catch up. And they're like rushing, and then they're like, oh, "Yeah, I'm in a rush. I'm going to the hub or whatever. I'm working." And I, at one point, I was going to say to them, "Did I do something last year to offend you? Because you're always so cold with me." Luckily, I caught myself, and I didn't say that, because then after a bit, I think that they felt something up, and then their demeanour changed a little bit, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm always in a, when I'm in work mode, I'm rushed and I'm really tired and stuff." And then as they went in, I don't know whether this will happen, they said, "Oh, you know what? Actually, we should catch up properly when I'm not working." And so in my head, I was actually, interestingly enough, I was going to go a different way, and I thought I'd walk an extra 20 metres with them just to kind of spend a bit more time with them. And had I departed earlier, I would have left with the meaning, that person is really cold, they still don't like me, I've done something to upset them, or they're just a moody person. Now, I'm thinking, okay, maybe whenever I've caught them before, they're always in work mode, or that may not be true, but again, it doesn't mean anything. Had I departed earlier, then I would have left thinking that person doesn't like me, they're rude or whatever. And now I have a different meaning. Whether that's the right meaning or not, who knows? But the reality is I've created meaning, and it reminds me of an example of a friend of mine when she started dating a guy and he didn't text her back for 8 hours or something, and she created this whole story about why that was, right? He was with another person, he didn't like her anymore, he was playing hard to get, whatever. And it turned out, firstly it doesn't mean anything, she created that meaning, but it turned out that he was on a night shift and wasn't able to take his phone with him or whatever the thing might be. And so we create stories, and even I know this, and I still do this. I still create stories, right? Oh, that person did this, and that means that, or I lost my job, and this means that. We are always creating meaning, and when we understand that, we can change the meaning. And this is not to say, oh, this is positive thinking, or this is some psycho babble. We are doing it anyway. We are always creating the meaning. So why don't we think to ourselves consciously, is what I'm creating now serving me or not? Is it helping me or hurting me? Choose the one that helps you, because you're making a choice either way.
Yeah, that's true. And this is also something that you teach your clients.
I teach my clients and anyone that will listen. But mind you, clients maybe listen more because they pay. And
yes.
People that pay attention.
Yes,
people
true.
In pubs don't care.
Yeah, they just want to chat about random stuff.
Oh yeah. I often get people when they go, "Oh, so you're an expert on sleep as well. How can I sleep more?" As they're drinking and doing things. And then I tell them things and they go, "Oh, but that wouldn't work for me." And this is I know, but yeah,
excuses.
And I'm just like,
Yeah, I have had similar experiences, because when I was a nutritionist, like, okay, now also people know me as a person who knows a lot about food and healthy eating and nutrition, and they ask something and they expect like this very quick answer, this one thing that changes everything.
Silver bullet.
Yeah, but actually it's very boring, it's routine, it's meal prep, it's like, consistency. But they don't want to like change their whole life, they just want this, magic pill that
Quick
makes
fix.
everything right.
They
But
want
it
a quick
doesn't work.
fix.
It doesn't work like this.
It doesn't work like that, and this is actually why I teach the philosophy I do, because in health and well-being you often get people who are specialists, right? You've got the specialist breathwork person, the specialist movement practice person, the specialist sleep expert, and whilst that's great for getting a lot of depth in a subject, what I find is most people don't need depth, what they need is breadth. That means they need to know a lot about, or a little bit, about a lot of things, as opposed to a lot about very little. And so I don't profess to be the world's foremost expert on sleep or managing technology or exercise or movement, but what I am is good enough in 20, 30, 40 different disciplines that I can teach people those foundational parts. And yes, if they want to go deep into one area, I can take them deeper to a certain extent, but then they may need to find the expert on that if they want to go really deep. But what I find is that some people in health and well-being, they focus on one area at the detriment to others. And whilst you can do that and be quite successful in life in general, at some point, if you don't have balance across all the areas that I talk about, either you won't perform as well, or you'll have a shorter career, or you'll be more susceptible to illness, or your business won't be successful, whatever it might be. And I think it's about balance, and sometimes in striving to get that balance, things will be out of balance. Right? So right now I'm striving for that connection balance. Sleep is out of balance, but I know how to put it back. And so yeah, for me, it's not about a silver bullet. Like I say, people always say, "What's the one thing I can do to improve my sleep? What's the one thing I can do?" And yes, there are some big hitters, right? So for example, if we're talking nutrition, the one thing I would say to people, and it's a bit of a broad thing in a way, I'd say, just stop eating processed food.
Oh, but this is actually like very big thing, because it's
it's a big thing.
It might be like the whole.
It might be the whole life.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing. But if they wanted one thing for me to say in 5 seconds, I would say cut out ultra processed food, and then that's one thing. But they don't want to hear that, because what they would like to hear is, there's this magic pill that we just discovered that can, there's the new weight loss injection that people are trying to. They want the magic pills.
Yeah.
These things, they're short-sighted, because even if they seem to work in the long term, and I know with, say, for example, the injection stuff that's going around, the side effects that are being only now just discovered, horrendous. And the reality is, if you try and take the shortcuts, it's not going to last.
Yeah, they also want change very fast. It's like, I just want to lose 10 kilos in a month. I'm like, but did you put on all this weight in a month? But usually it's like years and years of eating.
Well, exactly. And I say to people, look, I would much rather, if it takes you 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years to get to where you want to, let's say in terms of weight, far better for it to take you 6 years and you stick to it for the next 60 years than it take you 6 weeks and then you're back off again. And the next year you do another 6 weeks and you're back off again. I would say just take that 6 years, because in 6 years or whatever it takes you, then you can have it for a lifetime.
That's why I'm also not into the New Year's resolutions. It's like, for me, it's like, okay, January 1st, this just means that my gym is closed today, so I'm going on the 2nd of January. It's not like, new year, new me. It's like, I'm just continuing my routine. And I had it all going on also during the Christmas time, because it's like, it's always with me. It's not like, now the summer is coming, it's time to get in shape. It's
but that makes the headlines for the articles and the clickbait. It's like 7 ways to get beach body ready in 7 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Because people like that stuff, and I hate that stuff. And people are always saying to me, you need to hook people in. You need to hook your audience in with things, because just routines, habits, or whatever, they're not sexy enough, or telling people it's hard work is not sexy enough. And it really is frustrating to some degree.
They're having all this beach body for many years, and having this that could be actually be sexy in a way, but I think the world still needs to grow a little bit to be able to accept all this, that consistency and being boring.
It's consistency. I mean, on my Instagram account, so social media, you find me everywhere as the Thought Gym, YouTube and stuff. But on Instagram, about 3 years ago, I think it was, I posted a picture, and it seems like it was a little bit of a self-promoting picture, because effectively it was me topless at 14, 17, 22, 25, 28, 35, 38, and it was, obviously the body's changed a little bit, but it looks okay, and I was like, it's consistency, right? I've been consistent throughout my life in my movement practice, less so in the health practices until the last decade or so, but certainly movement practices, and so that's might be why I look. Now you got other people who say, I want that in 6 weeks, I want that. Now, I'm not like a body transformational person or anything like that, I don't do that sort of stuff, but my point is consistency. If you're consistent and you're consistent, change will happen. Change will happen. You just have to think about it's not even a metaphor, the cliffs being hounded by the waves, and over time, the waves are going to win, right? Because they're just consistently wearing it down. And I think that's the thing. And it's like everything. And we go back to our beginning. So last week I went to the Salsa Bachata for an evening, and I'm a total beginner. First lesson, I felt really uncomfortable, felt really painful, and I was really out of my element. Luckily I had someone who was helping me out, but I still feel like, is it worth the pain of going through all this, being consistent? So like the next year when I come to Mindvalley, I feel confident enough to like dance on the shuttle with people. Because it's going to be consistency. I mean, I could do a 2-day boot camp and I could get reasonably good, but it won't be deep enough into my memory that I'll remember next year. Much better for me to do a little bit all the time. And I say this to people I teach yoga. Rather than come once a week for an hour, better to do 10 minutes a day at home.
Yeah. I mean, consistency is the key everywhere, kind of. But it's like, okay, how do you get people into consistency? That's the trick.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I have a whole chapter in the new book on habit formation. The best bit of advice I've got to people is to try and put something new to something old. So if you're already doing, so I wanted a habit years ago of, I have this massage ball that I really wanted to get into the habit of rolling underneath my feet because it relaxes the feet and the tension. And I could never get into the habit of doing it until I placed it under my bathroom sink. And then whenever I brush my teeth, that's when I do it. And now it's very consistent because of that. So if you can link it to something you're already doing, that would be good. If you can make it fun, if you can commit to it. So right now I made a commitment when I came to the apartment a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, that every day that I'm living in the apartment here, I'm going to go swimming in the sea, rain or shine. And to make that commitment even stronger, I've been posting about it like every day in the group, because I want to be accountable to myself, and I want to be accountable to other people. Maybe inspire other people to join me like I did today and a couple of times. But so you can make a commitment to people that can do it, you can make it fun, you have a buddy that relies on you. There are lots of ways to start building these habits and routines in, and it's important to have those because willpower and discipline don't last.
Yeah.
Habits and routines tend to.
And I also think that the motivation is not the thing that you have to like always have. You can also go to the gym without motivation.
Yeah.
Just do it, because I think motivation is like a mood. It's very emotional, and if I rely on motivation, I think I wouldn't go.
No, I would never go. I say to my dad and everyone, because I was training my dad during COVID, and he's never exercised in his life, and he's like 70, 78 now, 79. And I said, look, 9 times out of 10, I do not want to go and exercise, right? I do it anyway, and if you always wait to feel like doing something before you do it, you'll never do it. You have to do the thing, and then you'll start to feel the way.
Yeah.
Right? You have to start dancing at a party to start feeling the mood, rather than I'll wait till the mood strikes me before I dance. So we have to do the thing, and it's hard. And I say to people all the time, in life, if you always do what is easy, your life will be hard. If you do what is hard, your life will be easy. Right? It is hard to get up and go to the gym and eat healthily, but it's going to be easier later because you're not going to have the illness and disease and whatever else. It's easy to sit at home, watch Netflix, drink, order takeaway, but then your life will be much harder later on.
Yeah, that's why I'm usually also choosing like competitive training and like competing, because this is harder, and that's also the reason why I chose bodybuilding over running at some point, like 2.5 years ago. Because I think as a runner, I was irritated and annoyed by the fact that all the runners, they were just eating crap and everything, and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna burn all the candies, I don't care. I'm like, I was so annoyed by this because I wanted to have like, I don't know, better way of eating. I was like, okay, I'm going into bodybuilding because it's harder there, and it will force me to reconsider my nutrition choices and also like eat cleaner, and also have people around me who are eating cleaner. So I just chose this harder because I knew it's going to also grow me as a person.
Well, you've also just given another tip when it comes to changing your habits and routines, which is surround yourself in an environment where the thing that you want to be doing is the norm, right? If it's normal to do that in that environment, you're going to be pulled up with that. So that's another great tip that listeners can take away is, be around people, a bit like why we're at Mindvalley to some degree as well, is that there's people who are maybe playing at a higher level and are going to inspire you, pull you up, rather than if you went on a club 18 to 30s boozy gym thing, right? Yeah. It's going to be a different vibe.
Yeah, it's like I went to Wayfest, which is another Mindvalley event, like 2 months ago, and I was like, I'm surrounded by all these remarkable people who are like living the life of their dreams, and they have like complete freedom. They are very successful. I was like, I want this. I want to come back every year. I want to be as successful. I want to live my full potential. So I came back and I was like in a taxi from airport to home, and then I just wrote my boss, okay, I'm resigning. I'm going away. I'm gonna quit IT.
Yeah.
So because I was just around these people and I realized, okay, these are more like my people.
Yeah.
I want to be surrounded by them because usually, in IT, but I don't want to say bad things about people, but mostly IT techie people, they are like more like eating candies and fueling up with caffeine and.
It's a different situation. At the end of the day, I always say to people, nothing's right or wrong in life. Like I said, nothing has any meaning except for the meaning you give it. So it's just that your path that you want to take and the things that you're interested in deviate from those other people. And what they're doing is right for them maybe, and what you're doing is right for you maybe. Like I say, people ask me, is McDonald's good or bad? I say, it depends, right? It depends. If your goal in life is to be a super performer and energize and have clear skin and be amazing, then maybe it's not a good thing. If your goal in life is maybe to become overweight and be more susceptible to getting diabetes and have no nutrients in your body, or you're starving in the middle of somewhere and you've eaten nothing for 5 days, then it's probably a good thing, right? So it's not like there's a good or bad. Nothing is good. I think it was Shakespeare that said this. I don't read Shakespeare, but I do know this quote: "Nothing is good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." So nothing in life is good or bad, but what we decide is good or bad. So is the McDonald's good or bad? It depends. It depends.
It always depends. And but another example from my IT job was like the HR person was telling me quite in the beginning, because also in IT there's usually a lot of free food available, and these are not always the best choices. It's usually like fast energy, like carbs.
Yeah.
And she was saying, oh yeah, everybody here kind of gains like 5 kilos in first year. I was like, no. This was like a joke, but it was also true. And I was like, no, I felt resistance. I'm like, no, I don't want this. I don't want to be in this environment where it's like super normal to just gain weight.
No.
Because there's like all these free cakes, free candies, free everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, it's down to personal choice and awareness, right? So we're not taking anyone away from people who want to do that, fine, for whatever reason they might want to do that. But it's more a case of awareness. So I'm aware that if I do this thing, this is likely to be the outcome. If I do this thing, this is likely to be the outcome. Which is the outcome you want? Remembering nothing's neither right nor wrong. And then you have to choose the actions that are in accordance with getting to the outcome you want. And that's not to say that you only ever do that thing. Like, it might be that once in a blue moon, you do decide to take those candies and that's fine, right? It's just, what is the usual behaviour, and is that getting you to where you want to get to ultimately?
Like you said, it's all about awareness.
Yeah.
This is where it starts.
Yeah, absolutely, right? All change starts with awareness. I mean, that's what started my journey 15 years ago, and that was with changing my diet. Now, I have a model, which I won't go through now, about changing habits, but the first step is awareness. And my little sister, God bless her, when this was like 2006, said to me, you know what, I'd read somewhere that eating dairy might affect your sinuses, and I have had bad sinuses my whole life, blocked nose, earaches, all sorts of things. I was aware. I didn't do anything about it for 2 years. 2 years later, I thought, okay, maybe I'll stop having dairy for 40 days over Easter Lent. And I did, and it cleared up probably 80% of them. The other 20% came from when I stopped eating gluten a few years later. But the point is, I had awareness. The next stage is always action, right? So actually, before action is appetite. They all begin with A, but it's like you have to want to change. So you can have the awareness that something is bad for you, but then you have to have the desire, the appetite to make a change, right? And then you go through the other stages. But I had that appetite in 2008, but not in 2006.
Yeah, I think many people actually had awareness. Everybody knows, okay, what kind of food is good for the body, but not everybody is doing it because it's uncomfortable for some reason.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable because we're changing a habit, we're changing a routine, and they're ingrained into us. And so, like, even when people want to give up sugar, I have a friend and he wanted to give up sugar, and he's like, I'm always giving up sugar. He's like, well, you're clearly not doing very well. Yeah, exactly. And he goes, I'm an all or nothing kind of person. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not working for you, because every time you're doing all or nothing, you're doing it all, you're doing like 3 weeks without sugar or whatever, then you go back to it for a year. Then you do 3 weeks. So it's not really working. And I keep saying, like, if you're having 3 sugars a day, or 5 cans of Coke a day, don't go from 5 cans of Coke to no cans of Coke. Go from 5 to 4.5 or 4 3/4. And then again, maybe it takes you 6 months, maybe it takes you 2 years to come from 5 down to 0. Better to take that time, unless there's a serious health consequence that you must stop immediately. But better to take 2 years to go from 5 cans to 0 than go from 5 to 0, 5 to 0, 5 to 0, 5 to 0 every few months.
Yeah, that's so true. So yeah, I think we also like wrapping up slowly this amazing talk. So,
yeah, it's been very interesting.
Okay, where can people find you? You mentioned Torchim is the
Yeah.
keyword that
Yeah, that's
people use.
basically on everything. So I've got a YouTube channel with hundreds of videos about mindset and all sorts of things called The Thought Gym. Instagram, The Thought Gym. Facebook, The Thought Gym. Twitter, The Thought Gym. LinkedIn will be my name. My website, I have 2 websites. One is thethoughtgym.com, where people can actually do a free comprehensive energy assessment, which will take them through a series of questions that will determine what areas of their life they can maybe look at to bring their energy levels up. And then also Hari, Hari, .hk is another website. So Hari, spelled Hari, .hk for Hari Kalymnios or Hong Kong. And then that'll take them to my website where they can look at my TEDx talk and a few other
Oh,
things.
you also have a TEDx talk.
I have a TEDx talk talking about the leadership beat model, which we didn't discuss today, but that's my overarching philosophy. My reason for being in the world right now is to teach and spread the message of that and help people unlock their inner superhuman by capitalising on the teachings within the leadership beat model.
Good. So yeah, thank you for this.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you
Yeah.
for listening and
Yeah.
playing along, guys.